give approval.
And members of the media who put themselves at risk amid the COVID-19 pandemic to bring valuable news and information to the public were given assistance by the Iglesia ni Cristo in its Leading Up sa Media Frontliners on Friday.
First in Asia, Vietnam's health ministry said they've discovered a new COVID-19 variant which spreads quickly by air and is a combination of the Indian and British strains. According to state media today, Health Minister Nguyen Tan Long did not specify the number of cases recorded with this new variant, but he said Vietnam will soon announce the discovery in the world's map of genetic strains. The country is struggling to deal with fresh outbreaks across more than half of its territory, including industrial zones and big cities such as Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City. More than 6,700 cases, including 47 deaths, have been reported in Vietnam. The lion's share have occurred since April. The new round of infections has made the public and government fearful, and authorities quickly moved to place strict limits on movement and business activity. Cafes, restaurants, hair salons, and massage parlors, as well as tourism and religious spots, have been ordered to close in various areas of the country. Vietnam, a country of 97 million people, has vaccinated a little over 1 million citizens. It's now ramping up its jab rollout and hopes to achieve herd immunity by the end of the year, according to the Minister for Health.
Even without confirmation from the World Health Organization, the Department of Health, or DOH, is already assuming community transmission of SARS-CoV-2 variants in the Philippines because of a rise in cases. Regardless, DOH Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeire said the best ways to protect oneself against the virus that causes COVID-19 are to adhere to the minimum public health standards and get the vaccine. Take a look.
Ang definition po ng community transmission, ito po yung pag-detect ng maraming large number of these variants. Pangalawa, may mga clusters po tayo nakikita at napatunayan na itong mga variants ang nag-cause niyan. Pangatlo, hindi na ho natin nalilink yung mga kaso sa bawat isa doon sa komunidad na pinangyayarihan. Ito pong ginagawa nating whole genome sequencing is we are doing purposive sampling kung saan hindi naman ho natin natetest lahat ng mga areas at tayo lang po ay namimili kung sino dahil may limitasyon pa rin po ang ating proseso. So kaya nga po kami ay we rely and also we request this help from the WHO so that they can be able to analyze properly at mabigyan po tayo ng guidance kung talagang may community transmission na nga dito sa ating bansa. Pero ang gusto lang ho nating sabihin sa ating mga kababayan, kahit na ano pa hong level ng community transmission, kahit na ano pang variants ang dumating dito sa ating bansa, yun pa rin naman po ang ating gagawin, hindi mababago. We just need to intensify our compliance with the minimum health protocols at kung turn na ho natin magpabakuna na po tayo. Sa ngayon po, Yusek Rocky, we can't even say that there is local transmission of this Indian variant. Ang naitatala pa lang ho natin sa ating mga datos ay 12 katao na na-identify natin na may mga variant na ito. Most of them have recovered already. Of course, yung alam natin na may isang namatay at meron pa hong naka-admit sa ospital na 3. Pero pag tinignan ho natin kasi, katulad nitong B1.1.7, itong UK variant sa ating bansa, only about 2% from these detected individuals ang namatay dahil po dito sa COVID-19. Dito po sa South African variant, ganun din po, mga 2.1% out of all of those identified with the South African variant. So pag tinignan ho natin, hindi pa rin ho natin nakikita yung direct correlation ng pagdami ng mga namamatay dito po sa mga variants. But of course, as I've said, may limitasyon ho ang ating surveillance when it comes to variants because we are just doing sampling in specific areas at hindi pa rin ho natin nakikita yung totoong picture.
The World World Health Organization warned Friday that efforts to uncover the COVID-19 pandemic's origins were being hampered by politics, insisting scientists needed space to work on solving the mystery. Take a look.
This whole process is being poisoned by politics. And if you expect scientists to do their work, if you expect scientists to collaborate and actually get the answers that you want, actually seek in a non-blame environment to find the origin of the virus so we may all learn how to prevent this happening in future, we would ask that this be done in a depoliticized environment where science and health is the objective of this and not blame and politics. Because quite frankly, over the last number of days, we've seen more and more and more discourse in the media with terribly little actual news or evidence or new material, and this is quite disturbing, quite frankly.
The UN Health Agency has been facing intensifying pressure for a new, more in-depth investigation of where COVID-19 came from, but so far there is no timeline for the next stage in the probe. U.S. President Joe Biden this week ordered the U.S. intelligence community to investigate whether the COVID-19 virus first emerged in China from an animal source or from a laboratory accident. During an ongoing meeting of WHO member states, European Union countries, and a range of others also pressed for clarity on the next steps in the organization's efforts to solve the mystery, seen as vital to averting future pandemics.
Meanwhile, Malaysia announced on Friday it will impose a nationwide lockdown for the first time in over a year as it battles a rapidly escalating coronavirus outbreak that has strained the country's healthcare system. Officials believe more infectious variants have contributed to the surge, as well as gatherings in the Muslim-majority country during the month of Ramadan and Eid al-Fitr holiday earlier this month. After a new daily record of 8,290 infections on Friday, Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin's office announced the entire country would enter a total lockdown from Tuesday. And this involves the complete shutdown of all social and economic sectors, with only businesses deemed essential allowed to operate, according to its statement. The restrictions will be in place initially until June 14.
Now, the EU's drug watchdog on Friday approved the Pfizer-BioNTech coronavirus jab for 12 to 15-year-olds, the first vaccine to get the green light for children in the bloc. Take a look.
Today's briefing is being...
The effect of Comirnaty in this age group has been determined based on a clinical trial that recruited approximately 2,000 adolescents in this age group. And the data demonstrate that the immune response in this age group are similar or even better than what we're seeing in young adults. And importantly, none of the vaccinated children in this group got COVID-19. From a safety perspective, the vaccine was well tolerated, and the side effects in this age group were very much similar than what we've seen in young adults, and not raising major concern at this point in time. This opinion from the scientific committee now will be transmitted to the European Commission, which will issue the final approval. However, it will be then up to each individual member state to decide if and when to use this vaccine in adolescents in the future.
The United States and Canada have both already authorized the vaccine for children of the same age. Meanwhile, the EMA confirmed it was looking into very rare cases of heart inflammation in people aged under 30 who had been given the Pfizer vaccine. U.S. authorities have also reported a small number of reports of heart inflammation among some younger people who Pfizer and Moderna, which uses the same messenger RNA technology. The EMA said it was working closely with its U.S. counterparts.
What's the year? 2005. And you're how old? 15. You're 15.
And the approval of the Pfizer for adolescents fires the starting gun for Germany to begin vaccinating children over 12, as Chancellor Angela Merkel announced on Thursday. But Merkel stressed that vaccination would not be compulsory and would have no bearing on whether children can attend school or go on holiday. Take a look.
Hat. Kinder und Jugendliche können dann ab dem Ende der Priorisierung, Sie wissen, dass am 7.6. im Allgemeinen die Priorisierung aufgehoben wird, sich auch um einen Impftermin bemühen, entweder eben bei niedergelassenen Ärzten oder auch gegebenenfalls in den Impfzentren.
Inoculating children is seen as a key step toward achieving herd immunity in the fight against the pandemic. Canada and the U.S. have already started vaccinating over 12s, but experts have also expressed reservations, pointing out that children rarely suffer from severe COVID and that vaccine supply is still tight. Merkel urged patients, saying not everyone would get an appointment for their child right away.
The Philippines will consider vaccinating teenagers once there is a steady supply of COVID-19 vaccines developed by U.S. drug maker Pfizer, according to Malacanang. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque made this statement after the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, of the Philippines announced that it would amend the emergency use authorization of Pfizer to allow its use on 12 to 15-year-old teenagers. Take a look.
Gagamitin po natin ng Pfizer pag dumating na yung ating mga biniling mga Pfizer. Kasi yung mga Pfizer na dumarating po ngayon, galing po yan sa COVAX facility, kinakailangan po ilaan natin yan para sa mga indigents. Pero wag po kayo mag-aalala, no? Matapos po yung July 4 sa Amerika na tinatawag nilang Independence Day from COVID, ay inaasahan natin na luluwag na ang supply ng Pfizer. So dahil yan lang naman po ang bakuna na po pwede sa teenagers, asahan po natin na bibili tayo ng mas marami pang Pfizer para sa mga teenagers.
Last Monday, WHO Country Representative Rabindra Abeyasinghe said the Philippines is set to receive additional 2 million doses of Pfizer vaccine through the COVAX facility in June. Roque assured that the government will procure more doses of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine for Filipino teenagers after the U.S. celebrates Independence Day. U.S. President Joe Biden earlier expressed hope that the U.S. can mark independence from COVID-19 on July 4.
A coronavirus surge sweeping through Thailand's prisons has thrown the spotlight on the kingdom's overcrowded penal system, where some inmates have less space to sleep than the inside of a coffin. As of Saturday, almost 25,000 people have tested positive inside jails, where inmates living cheek by jowl have been encouraged to keep wearing their masks even while they sleep. Authorities have floated plans to give early releases to prisoners with underlying medical conditions and have announced funding for more testing and medical care in recent days. The Thai prison population stood at around 311,000 earlier this year. The International Federation for Human Rights said more than 2.5 times the system's official capacity. And the news continues here on Eagle News. CJ and I will be back right after this break.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups Micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights. Sharpen your instincts for smart decision making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Humanda na kayo dahil this is gonna be an exciting battle para sa ating monthly finalist. This is Tagisan ng Galing Part 2 Singing Edition.
Welcome back to the news. The Philippines has filed a fresh diplomatic protest against China, demanding that it withdraw its vessels from the vicinity of the Pag-asa or Thitu Island in the West Philippine Sea. The Department of Foreign Affairs said it fired protest Friday against the incessant deployment, prolonged presence, and illegal activities of Chinese maritime assets and fishing vessels in the vicinity of the Pag-asa Islands. DFA also said the Pag-asa Islands is an integral part of the Philippines, over which it has sovereignty and jurisdiction. This comes amid continued reports that Chinese vessels remain scattered across the West Philippine Sea or the part of the South China Sea within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. Tensions between Manila and Beijing over the waterway, which China claims almost entirely, flared in March after hundreds of Chinese boats were spotted inside the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. China has ignored a 2016 International Tribunal decision that declared its historical claim over most of the South China Sea to be without basis.
Japan's Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide announced that the government will extend a coronavirus emergency in Tokyo and other parts of the country until just a month before the Olympics. Take a look.
北海道、東京都、愛知県、京都府、大阪府、兵庫県、岡山県、広島県、福岡県について緊急事態宣言を延長し、6月20日までと
Now, the measures mostly limit the sale of alcohol in bars and restaurants and ask them to close early while encouraging telework and capping audience numbers at events. Experts fear lifting the coronavirus restrictions too soon could create a surge in the run-up to the Games. The decision means Tokyo and 9 other parts of the country will be under states of emergency until June 20th, as we heard earlier, casting fresh doubt now on the prospects for the pandemic-postponed Olympics. Olympic organizers are pressing ahead with arrangements for the Games, and the first athletes, Australia's softball team, will arrive next week. Opposition in Japan remains strong, with medical experts and business leaders calling for its cancellation.
In other news, the deployment of Filipino workers to Saudi Arabia has resumed after the Philippine government lifted the temporary suspension today. The Saudi embassy in Manila announced the resumption over Twitter and assured that overseas Filipino workers or OFWs would not be burdened by the travel protocol costs upon their arrival in the kingdom. OFWs bound for Riyadh, 283 of them, and Dammam, 120 people, were left stranded at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport on Friday after they were barred from boarding their flights due to the suspension order issued by the Department of Labor and Employment. The temporary suspension came following initial reports that Filipinos were being required by their employers to shoulder the cost of health and safety protocols for the coronavirus disease 2019 or COVID-19 and insurance coverage premium upon entry to Saudi Arabia. It was learned that the cost of the institutional quarantine and insurance is 3,500 Saudi riyals or about 47,000 pesos.
In other news, the United States on Friday announced punitive measures against Belarus, targeting the regime of strongman President Alexander Lukashenko, who met with Russian leader Vladimir Putin amid a global outcry over the forced diversion of a European plane. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki called for a credible international investigation into the events of May 23, which she called a direct affront to international norms. Meanwhile, economic sanctions against 9 Belarusian state-owned enterprises reimposed by Washington in April following a crackdown on pro-democracy protests will come into effect on June 3. The White House also issued a do-not-travel warning for Belarus to U.S. citizens and warned American passenger planes to exercise extreme caution if considering flying over Belarusian airspace. Belarus scrambled a military jet to divert a Ryanair plane and arrested 26-year-old opposition journalist and activist Roman Protasevich, who was on board, triggering a global outcry.
Now, U.S. Senate Republicans on Friday blocked the creation of an independent commission to investigate the deadly riot by Donald Trump's supporters at the Capitol in Washington, a move aimed at preventing a bipartisan probe ahead of 2022 midterm elections. Take a look.
On this vote, the yeas are 54, the nays are 35. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative. The motion is not agreed to.
10 Republicans would have needed to join all 50 Democrats to advance the measure, which had already cleared the House of Representatives with modest bipartisan support. But only 6 Republicans voted in favor, a result that demonstrated the deep divide in Congress and the nation nearly 5 months after the violent January 6th assault, and the influence that the former president continues to exert on the Republican Party. The powerful Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell argued that the panel would have been a purely partisan exercise that would add nothing to the Department of Justice and congressional investigations already underway.
It's ambitious and historic in its price tag of $6 trillion. President Biden's first federal budget proposal looks to transform the economy from transportation to education, all the while confronting climate change. Take a look.
We must be number one in the world to lead the world in the 21st century. It's a simple proposition. And the starting gun has already gone off. We can't afford to fall any further behind. Now's the time to build the foundation that we've laid.
That's where they start, and then they end.
Under the Biden blueprint, the federal spigot would unleash $6 $8.011 trillion in 2022, with increases gradually rising to 8.2 trillion in 2031. Debt as a percentage of annual GDP would be expected to quickly surpass the level seen at the end of World War II. One huge chunk would be an infrastructure bill originally proposed at 2.3 trillion, but since whittled down to 1.7 trillion in negotiations with Congress. Another is 1.8 trillion would go to an increased state-funded education and social services. All, Biden argues, part of building a better 21st century workforce. The overall aim, Biden said, is to grow the U.S. middle class while positioning the U.S. to outcompete rivals. Congressman Kevin McCarthy, leader of the Republican majority in the House of Representatives, called it, quote, the most reckless and irresponsible budget proposal in my lifetime. Even some of Biden's supporters warned that an economy already set to roar back from the COVID-19 shutdown risks getting swept up into an inflationary spiral.
Funeral parlor workers removed the body of a woman who died of unknown causes and who was allegedly denied assistance from a taxi outside Cochabamba's Hospital del Norte amid a collapsing healthcare system in the central Bolivian city, where COVID-19 cases continue to rise. Take a look.
Y le han atendido a las enfermeras saliendo y le han dicho que ya estaba fallecido.
Al mismo tiempo, el municipio está cumpliendo con los trámites administrativos para hacer la adquisición de una planta de oxígeno acá, en el norte, con lo que de alguna manera paliaríamos las necesidades. También estamos con la situación de instalar las unidades de terapia intensiva, con lo que estaríamos de alguna manera paliando.
Bolivia has so far vaccinated 1.3 million people with 1 and 2 doses of the Sputnik, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and Sinopharm vaccines. The Ministry of Health expects to vaccinate 7.5 million people. The third wave has led to the saturation of hospitals and their intensive care units. The families of the sick and doctors are complaining of lack of medicines. Bolivia has also reported various COVID-19 variants. The increase of cases have prompted the government over the weekend to put in place rigid quarantine in 4 of the 9 regions of the country.
Meanwhile, Unit Aid's Executive Director Philippe Danton warned about the critical need for investment in oxygen to treat COVID patients in low and middle income countries, which have quadrupled in recent months. Take a look.
Oxygen is a key and essential medicine to fight COVID-19. It can reduce the mortality by 40%. Before COVID, in a lot of low and middle income countries, there was a failure in terms of access to oxygen. But of course, with COVID-19, the demand has increased. Several issues for that. One is the production, the distribution, the logistics, but also how to articulate access to oxygen to access to care. And that's a reason why we need to have more investment to support the country to develop their plan, but also more finance to get oxygen at the country, but for the people.
In the last week alone, several countries have seen rising COVID cases and oxygen needs. These include Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Philippines, Papua New Guinea, Bolivia, Egypt, Ethiopia, and South Africa. To mention just a few, funding is urgently needed to start addressing critical market failures, getting oxygen to those who need it, providing support to countries to assess their oxygen needs and apply for funding. Unit Aid is a global health agency engaged in finding innovative solutions to prevent, diagnose, and treat diseases more quickly, cheaply, and effectively in low and middle income countries.
The world is far from achieving equitable distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, a tragedy that must be avoided at all costs, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said on Friday during an online conversation on fair access to these life-saving treatments. Participating in the Global Solutions Summit 2021, the UN chief stressed the need to defeat the virus through doubling the number of doses produced and ensuring their fair distribution among countries. Take a look.
This is a race against time. Either vaccination becomes much more quicker and much more equitable and will be able to prevent a possible dramatic mutation into a virus that is immune against the vaccines, or if we don't go quickly enough and in an equitable way, sooner or later we might have a serious problem in which even those countries that have vaccinated, those countries that have to a certain extent abused their dominant position to vaccinate the population very quickly, all of a sudden they might discover that those vaccines will serve no purpose because the mutations in the global south will undermine the vaccination campaign in the global north. We must have an equitable distribution, and we are far from having it. We have seen vaccine nationalism, hoarding of vaccines, many countries buying 3 or 4 times the volume of their population. And on the other hand, we see enormous difficulty in supplying vaccines to the global south. And this is a tragedy that we need to avoid at all costs.
The pandemic situation needs a worldwide, well-coordinated, well-structured, and well-managed counter-strategy. And this is missing for the time being. Therefore, we must double the production for sure. And we must support those countries who have, for the time being, not sufficiently access to vaccines.
This is the second part.
The Secretary General also reiterated his proposal for a G20-led task force that would work with pharmaceutical companies and other stakeholders on providing vaccines for all people everywhere. Eagle News will be back with more stories. Please don't go away.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Tawagin na natin ang pinakagwapo na pagkagwapo, ladies and gentlemen. Let us all welcome Victor Wood!
Nagustuhan nila Derek at Sir Orly yung performance nyo. Kaya sa next episode, mag-partner na kayo.
Record ka ang sarili mong album. Wala. Hindi papatok yung ganyan style.
Payagan nyo lang ako mag-record uli.
I'm sorry, my love, if I've broken your heart.
Si Arceli nga po pala, fiancé ko.
Hindi ka naman dapat kabahan eh.
To forgive me.
Kapag nakapag-ipon ako, papakasal na tayo.
Ihanda nyo na yung kontrata schedules. Ilalabas na natin to sa buong Pilipinas.
Let me kiss and hold you tight.
Kalahati lang ng TF ni Rico at ni Ray yung TF ko eh.
Kung sino ang mas sikat, yun ang mas may malaking talent fee.
Eh kung kasikatan lang ang pag-uusapan, masikat naman ako sa mga yan.
Noon yun, Victor. Pero hindi mo inilagaan.
Kaya kong bumangon kahit wala ka.
My
Ngayong may pandemya, marami ang walang trabaho at mataas ang presyo ng bilihin. Isa sa nakikitang solusyon para makaiwas sa pagkagutom ay ang pagtatanim. May ilan, problemado sa espasyo dahil maliit ang kanilang lugar. Pero may sagot riyan para makapagtanim, ang hydroponics. Sa hydroponics, hindi ginagamitan ng lupa ang pinagtataniman, kundi tubig at nutrient solution lamang. Sa hydroponics, makakapagtanim ka ng gulay at kahit anong halaman. Masusolusyonan ang problema sa kagutuman at matutugunan ang seguridad sa pagkain.
A second volcano erupted today near the eastern Democratic Republic of Congo city of Goma, a week after Mount Nyiragongo roared back into life, causing devastation and sparking an exodus. Murara volcano, it's a small volcano considered a crater of Muragira, which along the Nyiragongo is known for strong volcanic activity. Take a look. It's located about 25 kilometers north of Goma, the capital of the North Kivu province. Located on the shore of Lake Kivu in the shadow of Nyiragongo, Africa's most active volcano, the city has lived in fear since it erupted last Saturday. The stratovolcano spewed rivers of lava that claimed nearly 36 lives and destroyed the homes of some 20,000 people before the eruption stopped. Tens of thousands had already fled Goma last Saturday night, but many returned when the eruption ended the following day. Scientists have since recorded hundreds of aftershocks.
Is the water table dwindling or is it being extracted excessively? Around Volvic in central France, water is becoming scarcer and discontent is growing against Danone, the owner of the famous mineral water, which is being accused of taking more than nature can give. Watch this.
Suivez-moi, vous allez voir les sorties là. Alors l'eau de la grotte sortait à peu près à ce niveau-là. Et aujourd'hui, il n'y a plus rien. Aujourd'hui, l'eau est embouteillée et exportée à 70%. On est passé de 470 litres seconde ou 510 litres seconde en 1960 à rien du tout. Et tout ça au profit de Danone. Enfin, c'est incroyable.
C'est qu'on a une sécheresse de plus en plus importante l'été. Face à ça, La seule chose que la Société des eaux de Volvic peut faire, c'est chaque année essayer de baisser ses prélèvements. Et force est de constater que depuis 2017, nos prélèvements ils baissent chaque année. Et on est maintenant à 14% en 3 ans avec 380 millions de litres économisés.
En cascade. Et là, on a vraiment un problème lié à une surexploitation de la ressource. On entend un certain nombre de gens dire dans la société de Volvic, on ne prélève pas plus que la nature peut donner. Bon, ça, comme phrase bateau, je l'ai entendu 25 fois.
In other news, walking tightropes, rappelling down a 4-story high rope tunnel, sitting in a dangling basket 58 floors high. Tourists have been stealing their nerves for adrenaline-filled challenges in a new assault course at the top of China's tallest TV tower. Take a look.
Finally, in our news, members of the media who put themselves at risk amid the COVID-19 pandemic to bring valuable news and information to the public were given assistance by the Iglesia ni Cristo and its Lingap sa media frontliners on Friday, May 28. Representatives of various media groups, including the National Press Club, or NPC, and the Philippine Movie Press Club, or PMPC, who attended the turnover ceremony of about 8,000 goodwill bags for the media frontliners held at the Eagle Broadcasting Corporation headquarters here in Quezon City, were very thankful that the INC, or the Church of Christ, especially INC Executive Minister Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, remembered them. Take a look.
Malaki ang epekto at kawalan, kumbaga yung mga movie press talagang naapektuhan ang kita. Sana bumalik na yung mga live show kasi malaking epekto yun eh. Pag walang mga live show, syempre wala rin masyadong maisusulat eh, di ba? At the same time, kung walang gathering talaga na maski pa paano may social distancing pero marami, di ba? Hindi nakakabuo ng press ko na face to face talaga na maramihan eh. So ganun din sa mga sa mga show, ang mga sinihan sarado pa rin. So ang mga producer kawawa din, 'di ba? Kung naapektuhan ang mga producer, ang mga artista, hanggang sa mga movie press, hanggang sa mga entertainment press, naapektuhan din.
Maraming nawalan trabaho, maraming nagkasakit, talagang maraming nagutom. Sa kabila ng katotohanan na frontliners ang media. 'Yun ang napakasakit po dito eh. Frontliners po ang media. But yet, no, karamihan, no, if talagang most of our media workers, talaga namang sa lahat ng frontliners sila ay walang PPE, 'di ba? Yung iba nga buti kung may pambili ng gamot.
Problema kasi natin ngayon, kasi sapagkat wala namang umasa na ganito katagal yung pandemya, yung lockdown, di ba? So yung ating mga tumulong sa atin nung isang taon, mararamdaman mo naman parang yung tinatawag nila na donors fatigue. Di ba? Biro mo isang taon kang tumutulong eh. Tapos pagpasok ng susunod na taon, gano'n naman. So yun talaga yun, yung tinatawag nga na donors fatigue. At saka yeah, let's face it, talagang tingin namin masisila naubusan na rin ng gustong itulong sa media.
I'll take this opportunity para magpasalamat sa Iglesia ni Cristo. Itong lingap na ginawa na to para sa media. Kasama siyempre ang Kamanawang Press Corps. Napaka-laking pasalamat namin to dahil sa kabila ng ganitong, sa pandemya na to, naranasan namin ng ganito na may tumutulong din sa amin. Kasi medyo nakalimutan din yung media dahil siyempre intindido naman natin dahil mas maraming dapat unahin. Pero being a media frontliner, talagang naging mahirap din para sa amin to, no? Dahil lalo siguro sa pagkabuhay ng maraming kabuhayan ng mga karamihan ng miyembro ko dahil karamihan sa kanila nalimitahan at nandun lang sa bahay. So nalimitahan din, so halos naging jobless din, no? So malaking bagay ito, itong katulad nitong lingap na pinagkaloob na Iglesia ni Cristo. So talagang very thankful kami dahil may ganitong ganitong effort, ganitong initiative from you sa Iglesia ni Cristo. So malaking bagay ito kahit papaano may ibsan din yung konting problema lalo sa pagkabuhay, pagkain ng ilang miyembro.
Gusto ko munang magpasalamat kay Eduardo Manalo sa proyekto, sa pag-ayuda at pagsuporta sa PMPC dito sa proyekto nila, itong lingap sa media frontliner.
Magpapasalamat po tayo sa tagapamahalang pangkalahatan, sa kapatid na Eduardo B. Manalo dahil sa maging tayo po dito sa Eagle Broadcasting Corporation ay kasama doon sa mga pinagkalooban ng lingap sa mga kagawad ng media at kinikilala natin na ito ay pagpapakita ng lubos na pagmamahal at pagmamalasakit ng tagapamahalang pangkalahatan sa ating lahat, hindi lang po sa mga kagawad ng media kundi sa ibang sektor pa ng ating lipunan na nililinga po ng Iglesia ni Cristo.
Alam po ng National Press Club, ito pong kinikilala po namin napakalaking tulong sa naman media, kundi alam po namin na buong mundo na po ang natulungan po ng kapatiran sa media natin natin.
National Press Club, or NPC President Paul Gutierrez, also thanked the INC Executive Minister for the help extended to their members. The NPC also presented a certification of appreciation to the INC and its socio-civic arm, the Felix Y. Manalo Foundation. According to Brother Glicerio P. Santos, the fourth of the INC Finance Department, who represented the Iglesia ni Cristo and the Felix Y. Manalo Foundation during the turnover ceremony, the activity is a testament to the concern of Iglesia ni Cristo Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, for the welfare of everybody, both members and non-members of the church. He said the INC will not stop in helping our fellow men, as this is in accordance with the biblical teaching to love your fellow men. The INC is stepping up efforts to further help those affected by the COVID-19 crisis via the church's socio-civic programs and activities such as the Lingap sa Mamamayan. The INC earlier this week also turned over thousands of goodwill bags to local government units in the National Capital Region Plus area. The same LGUs also received similar goodwill bags last month.
There you go. Have you received yours?
I haven't.
Yeah, but oh yeah, because you're in BGC.
I'll be driving by
But I
there
did.
next week.
Yes.
What a great way to end the week. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. Please join us again on Monday. Enjoy your weekend.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back on Monday. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.